lived with us. She didn't want to go back to the property. Eventually it came to the point of like, okay, you can go now. And so she went back, but I had to help pay for house insurance and car insurance and power bills and things like that. So I was kind of having to take care of the situation from that point. But Emily went back to Tennessee. Chris was in Atlanta, and Scott, I think, was staying at somebody's house, I guess, or went back to the property once it was, well, I know he went back to the property after it was released. But I don't know if he stayed with a friend for a while.
Okay. Were you ever part of any discussions with an attorney who told everybody not to talk?
Correct.
Okay.
On July 6th, I guess it was. I don't remember.
Friday, the next day?
Yes. It would have, somebody, I don't know who it was, maybe it was a consensus thing, but essentially it was, we needed somebody to help us. We didn't know what was going on.
Here, from that time period, if you need to look for the dates.
I didn't know what to do at that moment, but I knew that, what you see on TV, let's get an attorney to handle it. And somebody gave me Eric Durlacker's number. I did not have it, so somebody gave it to me. I don't know if it was one of my siblings or my mom. I have no idea. I can't remember. So I called him and I said, I need help. I don't know what to do. I need somebody to guide me through this, or take care of it, really, is what I wanted. I was like, take care of this.
Was this, by the way, and sorry to cut you off,
You're fine.
But timeline-wise, was this while your mother was being interviewed by Detective Hayes?
Correct.
Okay.
This was the day of the 6th, so
Okay.
Friday. And I called Eric, I don't know what time, and he just gave me Manny's number and told them that Deputy Hayes had my mother in the room and was questioning Scott, and they said, well, just let them know that she has an attorney. And we told him a couple of times, but she stayed in there for another hour or so. And then she finally came out and we went to the attorney's office. Everybody as a family went down there.
And that's when he said, y'all stop talking. Everybody stop talking.
Correct.
Anybody who knows anybody, stop talking.
Correct.
Okay. So when did it become apparent, or what could you tell from Scott and Chris breaking off from the family?
They eventually got very angry and irritated. I know Chris got mad at me because I told one of the detectives, I think his name was Tommy, that he decided not to go on vacation. Apparently that was a problem. He said we weren't supposed to talk to the attorneys, so we were all on the same page.
You mean law enforcement?
Yes, sorry, law enforcement. That we should basically just go to the attorney if we have any questions, and just to keep to ourselves, and that's it. And he was handling the situation, the attorney.
In this time period or ever before, had you ever heard your brother Scott say, this is my property,
Yes.
this is my house?
Multiple times. He flaunted the fact that that was his property. I almost kind of like joked in a way he kind of vicariously lived through my dad.
Kind of like the movie Step Brothers. You ever seen that?
I don't know if they took ownership of their dad's stuff.
Well,
but yeah,
okay.
I mean, in that same situation, and grown up, still living at home. Yes, I could see it in that aspect.
But he would claim things as his that were not his. That's fair to say.
They belonged to my mother and my father.
Okay. And you say, I mean, how often would you hear him say this?
He wouldn't say it like all the time, but it was always just like my farm, my property, my Kubota. He would get on social media. He would say, this is my property. I mean, he claimed ownership to it. That's for sure.
Okay. And speaking of social media, had you ever seen your brother shoot guns or anything like that?
He was in the military. He was always shooting guns at the house,
Okay.
from what I heard and what he said.
Did you ever see any of his videos on social media?
No.
Okay. But you knew he was always shooting guns.
He was always doing something around there, but yeah, it was a known thing that they used to go and I don't know if he would hunt stuff. I don't really know how that works because there were so many houses that were in close proximity, but I know that he would have leisurely kind of shootings back there.
Okay. So going on through late July and things like that, just to kind of talk about it, were there any issues? Did you ever have any communication or talk to Rusty during that time?
No.
Had you ever met him yet?
No.
Okay. And that would have been what, later on, about 2019, that you communicated with Rusty Barton?
When she was arrested, that was the first time I personally spoke to him.
Okay.
That I can recall.
All right. But you'd known during this time, you'd heard about Rusty Barton, yes?
Yes, there were rumors, but I didn't know the depths of it until the preliminary hearing.
So that was in 2019?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Right about the time.
Because she was already arrested at that point. So, yeah, I didn't know about all the meetings and all that kind of stuff. That was new to me at the preliminary hearing.
Okay. So going back to, tell me about the estate and how things were managed with the siblings for the family.
What do you mean?
Was your brother appointed as the executor of the estate?
Nobody was. The estate was locked down immediately when the house was locked down. My mother couldn't go down the road and get a sandwich if she wanted to. She was totally reliant on me from day one.
Well, I guess I'm talking more about, there was properties that were owned by the family, and was your brother Chris ever appointed over that?
My sister at one point got a coroner's letter that we did not know about. My mother had tried to get a lady named Diane to help her figure out what needed to be done with the estate because it had been so long, and that's when she went to the courthouse and realized that Chris had filed for, I don't know what you call it, for the estate, but he was given ownership of the estate, and we did not know.
Okay. Well, tell me how that went.
Not well. I know that it turned into, I texted Emily at one point and I said, Diane's told me that there's been money taken out, and my dad owned the condo that my sister lived in Tuscaloosa, and said that it had, I don't know if it went into foreclosure or whatnot, but a property management company was in charge of, they would get the check and then Daddy, I assume, would give it to the mortgage company at that point, and it was not being done. So the condo was lost.
And that was the condo in Tuscaloosa?
Correct, and that's when I petitioned to have the third-party estate attorney. So none of us had our hands on it. It was purely an outside source, and I did not know that was an option until my mother spoke to Diane.
Okay. And so did they loop you in on any of this, Chris and Scott and Emily?
No.
Right, so you were just kind of left on the outside.
Nobody talked to me about it.
Right. And is that because you were the only one showing any support for your mother?
I had to take care of her. I had no option but to take care of her at that point. Emily ran off back to Tennessee, and Chris and Scott were no help. I financially took care of a lot that first year. It was really hard on us. But we did it because it had to be done. God forbid something happened to the house, and the mortgage was over almost probably $5,500 a month. And then the home insurance, I paid for that. So if anything were to happen to it, we wouldn't be in a really big situation, but that was $600 a month. Paid for the car insurance on all of the cars, including Scott's. And that's kind of where Scott and I fell out.
Over his car?
Over his car, because I was having to pay the car insurance and he didn't have a job at the time. And it was really hard to get money out of him. And I didn't have the money to be paying for all of that. So it just got into arguments, and finally when Jeff Restbridge, the state attorney, got appointed, I just said, please defer all your questions to him, because it was a losing battle.
Did you ever become aware that Scott would call law enforcement, 911 on your mother pretty regularly in 2019?
From my mother.
Okay. Did you ever hear any of these calls, or did it come up on an altercation between the two of them? No,
she would always call me and say what was happening, and I told her she either needed to audio record it or video record it, or nobody was going to believe her.
Okay. Your father was a very large man. Mm-hmm. Do you know how much he weighed?
280, 290, 300.
Right in that area?
He was 6'5". I'm 5'7", and I came up to his chest, right about here.
Okay. How much do you think your mother weighs?
125 pounds soaking wet.
Okay. Does she have any physical conditions of note?
She had scoliosis really bad. She's had it all of her life.
How bad? Like, is her back?
Yeah, if you look at it, I mean, there's probably a couple inches difference from the side of her back to the other. She got kicked in the leg by one of the horses, and she was in a cast for a really long, one of those kind of, I think it was like a soft cast for a while, but she couldn't walk. She had to do rehabilitation on that. But other than that, I mean, she's been active, I guess you would say.
Your Honor, if I may have a moment. That's all this time, Your Honor.
Hi, Mr. Ferris.
Thank you. Amanda, I want to begin with, you testified a lot today about, I guess, how you view certain evidence. Is that fair to say?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Have you kind of when the defense counsel will ask you questions, you would respond, and that's really based on what you know in this case or your beliefs. Is that fair?
I would say it's mostly opinion, but I don't know much about anything. All I know is from when Deputy Hayes told me about that my father was shot, and that was from my mother the very first night at Freehome Fire Station, and then what we know in the preliminary hearing.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
The preliminary hearing?
Okay. On July 5th, 2019, almost actually a year to the day that your father's remains were found, there was a preliminary hearing where certain evidence was introduced that gave you more knowledge of the case. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
But what I want to go through is you do not have any personal knowledge of the details of what happened July 3rd, 2018 from 9:30 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. the next morning. You don't have any personal knowledge of what happened, right?
No, sir.
You don't have any personal knowledge of what happened on January 4th, 2018 from about 6:30 that morning until about 2 p.m. when your mom came to the lake where you were at, right?
Only what she told me, that she was coming to see me.
And you would agree with me that a lot of what you know or has been told to you by your mom.
Absolutely.
You agree that a major source of your information, the predominant, overreaching source of information is from what your mom told you, right?
Correct.
I mean, an example of that is things that happen outside of your presence, whether it was what Scott said or Chris said, your mother would come back and say, this is what happened, right?
To some degree, but I would be with my brothers if they said something directly to me.
Right, but if you were not at the house when afterwards there were questions about the property and things like that, if your mom was just there, she'd come back and tell you her version of things that happened, right?
Correct.
So it depends a lot on her credibility when what she says, right?
Absolutely.
You know there's evidence of her lying through this trial?
I don't know. I mean, if it was in the preliminary hearing, maybe.
But you agree with me that credibility counts, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, your credibility,
Yes, sir.
not just in what you say, but also how you say it.
Yes, sir.
I mean, are you trying to testify here objectively, not your thumb on the scales at all? You're just trying to say, this is what I know?
This is just what I know. It's not my job to figure out what happened.
And so when you choose your words, sometimes, like you said that Emily ran back to Tennessee. You used the word run. Is that just your opinion on what she did?
Yes, I felt like she abandoned me and did not help me.
You don't have any personal knowledge of who was present at your mom and dad's house on July 3rd, 2018 from 9:30 p.m. to 2:30 a.m., right?
No.
You don't know what happened or who was present to do anything, correct?
I mean, I assumed my mother was there, and I assumed Scott, but that was because she told me Scott came home that night.
Okay, but you don't have any personal knowledge of that, right?
No.
It's just based on what she said.
Yeah, because I wasn't there, so I wouldn't know.
And July 4th, that Wednesday, you don't have any personal knowledge of what your mother was doing on the property before she came to see you at the lake, right?
Only what she told me. She was working on the property.
But she did say she was working on the property, right?
Correct.
But outside of that, you have no personal knowledge of the actual events in this case that led to the murder of your father.
No.
You don't know any circumstances about where your father was shot with one bullet, do you?
No.
You don't know any circumstances about where your father was shot with another bullet, do you?
No.
You don't know where in the house it was done?
I don't think that was brought up in the preliminary hearing. I just think that, I don't even know if they even said that he was shot in the house.
And you don't know how, what was done in this case to conceal the crime, right?
No.
You have no personal knowledge.
No.
You're just testifying to the best of your ability of things that occurred kind of before and after. Is that fair?
You have very, very limited information.
Now, you also don't have any personal knowledge, although you'd agree if two people in a conversation, those two people have knowledge of what was said, assuming everything's normal, they would know what was talked about in conversations, right?
What do you mean?
If you and I were having a conversation like we are now, I mean, you would know and I would know because we're intentionally trying to relay information and messages to one another. We would know what's going on, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, assuming we're not insane or anything like that, we would know what was said or what was actually said or not said, correct?
Yeah, if you were only there to see it yourself, that's the only way you truly know.
Sure. And you would agree with me that in this case, we're testifying many years later than when the actual stuff occurred, right?
Oh, yes.
And sometimes you can do, when you're looking back on what happened, it wasn't at the time. So sometimes, even with the passage of time, whether it's from memory or from intent, sometimes you don't remember exactly what was said.
Absolutely.
But your memory is usually better at the time that something was said than, say, 6 years down the road. Is that fair?
Repeat that?
Generally speaking, your memory, when you say something at that time, is better than your memory of what was said maybe 6 years after the fact.
I think certain things stick with you more than others, but time definitely is not helpful.
And I think that's fair. And so if you were told that Gary's in the burn pile, that would be something that would stick with you, right?
Yes.
So you don't have any personal knowledge what was said between your mother and her lover Rusty on July 3rd, 2018 at 9:26 p.m.
No.
Did you know they talked for 4 minutes that day?
It was brought out in the preliminary hearing that they had a phone call.
She ever tell you exactly what they said during that phone call?
I did not discuss anything with her.
And you have no personal knowledge of what was said between your mom and Rusty on July 3rd, 2018 at 11:28 p.m. where they talked for 5 minutes, do you?
No. I didn't know they were communicating at that time.
And it shocked you when you found out, right?
When I found out that they
About
were
Rusty.
about Rusty, yes. That when I found out at the preliminary hearing that they had the relationship that they did, that was very shocking.
Yeah, it shook your world, didn't it?
Yes, but it wasn't the first time.
On July 3rd, you have no personal knowledge of what was said between your mom and the defendant on your mom and Rusty on July 3rd, 2018 at 11:45 p.m. where they talked for an hour and 14 minutes, do you?
No.
You don't know what was said between your mom and Rusty on July 4th, 2018 at 2:20 a.m. where they talked for about 36 minutes, right?
No, I don't.
You do know that Rusty came back and, quote, recanted that statement in some way, right?
They said that in the preliminary hearing, yes.
But afterwards, your mother told you to go and talk to Rusty, didn't she?
She had asked me to
And y'all did talk to Rusty.
when she was arrested.
And y'all talked to him about that, right?
The only thing I remember talking to him was when I asked him, because I heard in the preliminary hearing that she said he's on the burn pile, whatever it was. I said, did she say that? And he said no.
And you have no idea what was said between your mom and Rusty since July 5th, 2018, even up to this day, right?
No.
You do have personal knowledge of your loyalty to your mother, though, don't you?
I have loyalty to my mother and my father, yes.
I think you said on direct your words, you have a loyalty to your mother to a fault.
Yes. I think anybody I feel that way towards.
And it's fair to say that you're biased in favor of your mom.
I wouldn't say how I'm biased in favor of it. I believe that somebody is innocent until they're proven guilty.
So would you say that you do believe in your mom though?
She has told me that she's not guilty, and all I can do is believe that until somebody can prove she is guilty. So I would like to believe that my mother had nothing to do with this. Some may call it denial, but I call it honoring my mother, and I would do the exact same thing if it was for my dad.
But you won't do that same thing for Scott or Chris though, will you?
No, it's very hard to explain, but not talking to them is alienating them. Again, communication is a two-way street. It's not just me that turned away, and it's okay that I turned away. It's even in the Bible that says that it's okay that I turned away.
I want to talk to you about your foundation for testifying today and some of your knowledge. Have you talked to, now when I say this, there's nothing wrong. The two attorneys here are honorable men. I consider them friends. They're honorable. Don't hear me saying that. But I did want to know, you've talked with them on several occasions, right?
Correct.
When was the last time that you talked with Mr. Ray or Mr. Weaver?
We talked today?
How many did you meet with them to practice or go over your testimony?
No.
Did you talk about what you're going to say?
No.
Did they give you? Do you have any discovery?
Do I have any discovery? No.
You haven't listened to any recordings?
No.
Have you read anything?
No.
Have you watched anything on TV?
I've seen it pop up on the news, and I've had people troll my Facebook account.
Has your husband Chad Bruce told you anything about the case?
Not that I'm aware of.
Has anybody in any shape or form given you information about the case?
People have tried to come up and communicate, and I have to stop them.
But you have talked to your mom about the case, and she's given you details of her version of things, right?
She more and I talked about it the first year after this happened. When she was arrested, we had phone calls, and then it just got to a certain point. I had my son, and I didn't feel like talking about this anymore. And when she came to live with us, it was a rule that I set down, and I said, we are not going to discuss this because it was best for everybody, and it wasn't needed.
So if you could shrink the world down to the person that you've got most of your information from, it's not going to be the attorneys, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be Scott and Chris, correct?
No, I guess not.
It's going to be your mom, right?
Everybody has their own opinion of everything, so I take everything with a grain of salt.
But my question is, it's going to be your mom, right?
I guess since I've seen her the most, that would make the most plausible answer, I assume.
So yes, it would be your mom.
Yes.
This is Payne 1. This was Emily's wedding, is that right?
Yes.
Now, these are better days here for the family,
It was.
and everybody's looking great, smiling, looking wonderful.
It was a really good day.
Would you like to be able to go back to those days?
Yes.
Now, I know a child cannot measure the love for their mother, but you do love your mom, right?
And my dad, yes.
And you are her child?
Yes,
You're her daughter?
that is correct.
You're her favorite daughter, aren't you?
I wouldn't say that.
You're her favorite child, aren't you?
I wouldn't say that.
Do you say that she has the same positive feelings towards the other three as she does to you as we sit here?
I think my mother equally talked about us positively and negatively. You're
the only child that's siding with her, though, correct?
I'm the one that's choosing to believe that she's innocent until proven guilty.
And it's your belief. I understand that. But again, my question is, you're the only one that's on her side or choosing to believe as you do, correct?
I'm the only one choosing to believe in the justice system.
And you're the only one that's had a continuing relationship with her since the murder of your father, right?
Yes.
In fact, at times you've not only been a daughter and a child of her, but you've been an advocate for her, right?
I have been a support system
Yep.
in the sense of I had to be the strength when nobody else would be.
And what I mean by that, there are times that she would call you from jail or contact you somehow when she's out, and she would ask you to go and talk to other people and do things, right?
Correct.
She would get you, whether it's with the house or meeting with the attorney, she wanted you to relay certain information. Is that fair?
She wanted to, but sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't. A lot of times I would say yeah, and then I wouldn't do it.
But times you would, right?
Yes.
And you haven't heard the jail calls that we have between you and her. You haven't seen that at trial, have you?
No.
So you don't know what has been said between you and her that the jury already knows about, right?
No. I know it. Potentially, if I heard it, I would obviously, if it was a conversation between us.
And you agree with me that your relationship with your brothers and sisters has soured since all this happened?
Unfortunately.
And it upsets you because they're not taking up for your mom, right?
No, it upsets me because it shows how much that they love me. It has nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with I'm their sister, and they left me.
You feel like you've been abandoned?
Yes, I lost my whole family that day.
Would you agree with me that you lost your family because your father's been murdered?
That was the cause and reaction, I guess you would say.
And from their standpoint, it's fair to see that they have feelings that their mother has murdered their father, so they have hard feelings because of that.
And rightfully so.
Now, you talking about, I was asking you earlier about your beliefs and your opinions on things, and you do give some information. Like, do you remember telling the defense on direct examination that on July 4th of 2018, you just wanted to have a quiet time with your family at Lake Lanier? Is that
What I want every day of my life.
And you talked about that's because there was drama with Chris and Jenna the year before, right?
Correct.
There's usually more to the story than just what one side brings out at times. Isn't that true?
I could say that's true.
Your husband, Chad Bruce, is kind of a prankster. He teases people, doesn't he?
He's funny. He likes to have fun.
So you talk about Jenna getting upset that day and all that, but that day in 2017, y'all actually scared Jenna twice, didn't you?
It may have been twice. I know of once because she was not very happy with me.
You know, one time when she was sitting in the car and went up and scared her. The next time y'all hid behind a bush when she came by and scared her again, right?
I know about the bush, yes.
Yeah. And then she got so upset that afterwards because she didn't want to be scared and you did it twice that she actually kicked a drink and went all over you and Chad, right?
Correct.
And you basically had to talk to Chad and say, hey.
I mean, I wouldn't have to talk to him, but
It made y'all mad, didn't it?
I wouldn't say it made us mad. We were just like, I think that was a bit of an overreaction. We were just having a good time.
Well, you tell all the people that at that point you decided to never go back out with them again.
That was because of their drinking.
Right. But you can understand if you get scared twice, it can upset people, right?
I understand that it was insensitive at the time, but it was all in good fun.
Could be bullying.
The girls were with us when we did that, I believe. I'm almost positive that they were with us.
Right, well, it could be offensive or bullying somebody if you do it twice in one day, right?
I think that's a bit much to say. They're my brother and my sister-in-law. I've known them forever.
But that's how you felt about it, right?
What do you mean?
How you feel about the situation is kind of your beliefs, right?
I guess you would say that. Yes, everybody has their own opinion.
Now, through this, there's been times when you talked about, you had a lot of emotions earlier today. You were crying a lot, and it's tough for you, isn't it, to do this, isn't it?
Yes, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. This is the worst thing anybody could go through.
But throughout this process, you actually had different emotions where you were angry or irritated towards your family. Is that fair?
I had a lot of anger for many years after this.
And how we see you today, how you emote today, is not necessarily how you emoted on a jail call or how you had your emotions you would have around Scott or Chris, right?
Yeah, I've done a lot. I've come in a relationship with God, and I've had my son, and that has drastically changed my life and my outlook and how I handle certain situations.
And so you have gotten upset and gotten on them, barked back with them as they barked with you in the past, right?
I would say so. I mean, I've reviewed text messages knowing that this trial has come, and I know that I understand why they feel the way they do. I do. I really do understand, and they're rightful for that. But I don't feel like the way that they treated me in response was needed, to the point of where when my dad's mother died, they didn't even tell me she had a stroke and she was on her deathbed. I had to find out through my aunt on social media because my siblings didn't even have the common courtesy to tell me.
You're upset with them.
At that time, yes.
And there are two main categories that y'all were, whether you want to say arguing or disagreeing over or having hard times over. It was the murder of your father. That's one, right?
Yes, very
And
hard.
then the other is, what do we do with the estate afterwards, correct?
Correct.
So one was the murder and the other was kind of related to money or property, right?
It was always an argument. It couldn't ever be civil. It always had to be an issue. And I was doing everything that was legal. I worked with the estate attorney. I did everything I was supposed to, and everybody knew what I was doing.
And I think the term you were trying to find earlier, because I'm a lawyer and I forget it too, because I don't do that, as a temporary administrator of the estate.
That sounds correct.
And that's what Chris was he had been appointed temporary administrator.
He had petitioned or whatever, I don't know what you call it, but he went to the courthouse and was able to get.
Right. And so if someone dies without a will, their estate is probated, has to go through the court system, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
I mean, that's why you've got other people. You got a third party, I think you described as, it's in the court system, right?
Yes, I wanted somebody that was not tied to the family to handle it.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's common sense. That's very good, because family can have lots of hard feelings or strong feelings, right?
Yes,
So a third party is a good thing, correct?
absolutely.
But until you get to that, sometimes the family has to be involved in what's going on, right?
Correct.
And when you try to get property back, because part of the thing that you have to do is make sure that the estate doesn't dissipate or go away. You have to protect it.
Correct.